Good morning, everybody. How's it going? We're going to have a fun time this morning. What do you think, huh? You're going to get some energy going in here? You are all the recipients and beneficiaries of a very well-run event. In fact, it's eerie how well it's run. About 5 minutes ago, to share a personal tidbit, I may or may not have been in the restroom. And this very nice gentleman named Mitch came in and said, "Jason, are you in here?" I was like, "Yes, I am." To which Mitch took out his walkie-talkie. "I've got Jason. He's in the restroom. I'm going to make sure to get him over here right away." I have yet to any place I have gone to speak actually been found in the restroom and brought in to speak to the welcoming audience. That's how you know that today is going to be a great day. Give him a round of applause. So we're going to spend the next 20 or 25 minutes so together. And for those of you that don't know, I run a company called Docstoc, and we help small businesses. And Docstoc, which we started here in Southern California, is now one of the most visited websites in all of the world. There's about 25 million people a month that use Docstoc.com, and we have 35 million registered members. And we have the best collection of documents, business videos, tools, and resources to help small business. And I was thinking about what we could talk today that would be really interesting and valuable. And in honor of Father's Day coming up, I thought it might be interesting to draw the parallels of all the lessons I've learned from my father, who's a very old school entrepreneur and runs his business very much like an owner, versus the lessons that I've learned since, scaling a company to be one of the top, most recognized global internet sites with 50 employees and raising millions of dollars in venture capital. And so today's presentation is going to be about the management lessons of owners versus CEOs. So if we can pull up the presentation, we'll jump in and get started. Great. So you're going to get to know my dad intimately well. And I'm going to frame the first 9 lessons. We've got 18 overall, coming of age, 18 lessons. First 9 lessons I learned from my father. And the next 9 lessons after that are lessons I learned from venture capitalists and folks that are running large-scale organizations. And the idea here is, how do we cherry pick the best of both philosophies to run our businesses for the most success? Because that's what we really care about, right? You're here because you want to figure out how to grow your business, how to run it with less hassle, how to help more people, and that's what I think I can help you do in part today. So the first thing I learned from my dad as an owner is you do whatever needs to be done. And I'm preaching to the choir here, I don't need to tell you, but you do any job. And my dad came to this country in the 1950s. He's Persian Jewish. He came here without any money, and he slowly started saving up money and started buying a little bit of real estate. And I saw him growing up do every job there was. He did bookkeeping. He was the plumber. He was the pretend manager of his own buildings. He did every single job that needed to get done. And there is no hubris. There is no ego. There is no saying, "I am better than that." When you are in business for yourself, you and us are responsible for everything. And there is no job too small, no job too menial, no job not important enough for us to do. Whatever needs to get done, we do. The second thing I learned from my dad's name is Nuri. My dad's 83 years old as of a couple of days ago. Is my dad will negotiate everything. I'm sure you may think, "Oh, no, I already do that." No, let me give you an example. When we go to Rite Aid to buy my mother's prescription drugs, he will try to negotiate with a nice lady behind the counter the price of her prescription drugs. And you know what? Sometimes he gets a discount. Genuinely. There was one time that we were in a line at Rite Aid, and he goes to the woman behind the counter, "I can't believe it. You look so beautiful today. That's why you should give me 20% off." And I genuinely think she was so confused, she gave him the discount just to let him go. Right? Meanwhile, there's a line of 15 people behind us. I'm like, "Dad, can we just buy Mom's heart medication and leave?" But what I learned from my dad is that every penny matters. You save and you put together. And any price that anybody quotes us, that's not the price that we're paying for. And the way that we grow our businesses and the way that we're successful is that we look at every single expense And we manage our money so carefully. There is not a single thing that I ever saw my dad not negotiate. In fact, I never even got an allowance growing up. Every time I needed money for anything, I had to go to him and make a case of why I needed $2, $3, $5. My one trick was that all the way up through 8th grade, I lied to him and convinced them that lunch money was $2 when it was actually $1, so I always had that extra dollar to spare. That was the one thing he didn't figure out how to negotiate back. Or maybe he did and he just cut me some slack. Number 3, as owners, cash is our king. We got to protect our downside risk. The name of the game is to stay in the game. Your cash is king. Benefit and fortune favors those who stay in it longer. You've got to always be thinking as you're growing your business, yes, I want to keep growing, I want to do better, but you've got to protect that downside risk. Don't ever put yourself in a position where the risk you take is unwarranted to the reward that you can get. I'll repeat that. Don't take risks that are unwarranted and unproportional to the reward you can get on the upside. We are all better off for being able to live to fight another day. And watching your cash and making sure that you're always protecting your downside risk is one of the most important things that I've ever learned. It also means that even in a company today where I have 50 employees and we go by GAAP accounting and we have all these rules, the first thing I always ask my director of finance is how much cash came into the company this month and how much went out. I don't want to know the GAAP reporting. I don't want to know, what we're spending on everything that's amortized. I don't want to know the fancy accounting. We'll get to that later. I still run our business to this day, which does millions and millions of dollars of revenue, as what cash is going in and what cash is going out. Number 4 from owners. Nobody's going to figure it out for you. Nobody's going to figure it out for you. Now, what is nobody going to figure out for you? Anything, everything, all of it. But most importantly, nobody's going to figure out for you how to get your customers or make sales. And a lot of times as business owners, we want to focus on the thing we do. I make great clothes. I give good advice. I build great properties. And those are great, fantastic skills to have. But at the end of the day, we grow our businesses by the ability to get people to want to use our products or services. And how many times have we asked ourselves, well, can't somebody else just figure that out? Can't somebody else figure out the sales? Can't figure out figure out the marketing? True story. 2 months before we launched Docstoc, this is the end of 2007, I really wanted to leverage social media to make sure that first day that we launched the site, we got a big pop. And this was before there were a lot of people buzzing about social media and talking about social media consultants. And for 3 months, I tried to hire somebody to figure out how on the first day that we launched the site to leverage social media to get lots of traffic. And you know what? People just weren't getting it figured out. And I took 30 days before we launched the site, and I said, you know what? One of the most important things we have to do is day when we launch, get visitors. And the first day that we launched our website, the first day, without any marketing budget whatsoever, we got 45,000 people coming to our website. Today, we get over 1 million people a day coming to our website. And the way we did that is I just finally said, you know what? I'm going to go figure this out myself. And I stayed up every night, 16 hours a day, till 3 or 4 in the morning. I went on chat lines. I talked to everyone I could find on the internet. How does this really work? I really just copied and modeled what the most successful people were doing in social media, and I applied those principles our first day. Had I left it to somebody else to figure out, we would not have been as successful on the day that we launched. Next, personality matters. My dad's someone that's got a big personality. If he saw, half of the audience here, the first thing he's going to say to you is, oh my God, who is this beautiful lady? You get more beautiful every day. He's never met you before in his life. My dad's fond of saying, he'll often go to me and he says, Jason, you have to know how to talk to people. You have to know how to talk to them so that they feel good. People will often want to do business with you just because they like you. And before we have a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of tools and we're well known, what we have to leverage is our our own self, our own brand, our own personality. And your personality matters because people want to work with people whom they like. And we often forget this. We often think it's about this thing that we're building, but it's not. In the beginning, it's us. And your personality and your ability to connect and engage and get people to like you is probably the most valuable commodity you have early on in the business before there's lots of other resources. Fortune favors the bold. And my dad's fond. We play this game where we drive around Los Angeles, and he'll point out a property. He said, "You know how much I could have brought that property for in 1980? You know how much it's worth now?" And he did all right for himself. For someone that came to this country without a dime in the 1950s, raised 4 kids, of which I'm the last, and able to find his way into buying real estate in a growing Los Angeles market, he did quite well. And his boldness was rewarded with fortune. But he also reminds me every single day, every time we get in the car together, we can drive around any part of Los Angeles, and he'll point out the building that he had the chance to buy. And at some point, I'll say, well, why didn't you buy that? Things would be a lot easier for us to have if you had. As owners, we know that fortune favors the bold. I'm sure a lot of you can relate yourself for people that you've worked for. But for my dad, also, nothing is ever good enough. That bar keeps on rising. In fact, he has a phrase that he's quite fond of, which is, I'll tell him something that I did that I thought was good or that he should be proud of or that deserves some merit. And he'll respond and he'll say, "Congratulations, Jason. I'll give you a shit medal." Like, "Dad, I finally finished law school. Congratulations, I'll give you a shit medal. Now go make money." "Dad, I raised $4 million in venture capital. Go sell your business. Congratulations, I'll give you a shit medal." And it's one of the most important things I actually learned from him is that high standards matter. And one of the things I really, nothing is ever quite good enough for my dad. Now, he'll come back and tell me he loves me and everything's great, but as business owners, being the ones that set that really high bar, the bar that everyone has to keep striving to, is really important. If we ever feel satisfied with where we're at, then I think we'll eventually get dissatisfied results. What are we waiting for? Do it now, this second, now, right now. In a previous business I had, we were running a consulting company, and a very wonderful, lovely man, Mike Sheminsky, who is an extremely successful real estate investor, totally self-made man, very poor growing up, probably built a net worth of hundreds of millions of dollars. Gave us this little space in one of his offices to run our last business when we were first starting out. And he would come by and we would be talking, and he'd say, hey, he'd suggest that we do something. And what do most of us do? Like, oh, I'll make a mental note, I'll do it later. He would turn to me and say, take out your phone and call that person right now. What are you waiting for? Do it now. When I talk to my dad and he wants to see about getting a loan on one of the properties, there's no, hey, I'll check on that 3, 4, 5 days later. If he wants to go look at a property for sale, it's not like, oh, well, let's get around to it later today. Good business owners, great business owners have an instinct that the most important things they do, there is in a heightened, extreme sense of urgency that you're going to do it now, this second, this very instant. Whatever is most critical for your business, you're not going to wait on. What are you waiting for? The most important thing for your business, you got to do this very second because the clock is ticking, and every second wasted is an opportunity lost. And finally, owners are focused on building something to pass on. And by the way, that's not something just for folks that building a family business. Steve Jobs had that owner mentality. And he wasn't necessarily trying to pass Apple on to his children to run, but he wanted to build this business that he spent 40 years of his life creating to pass on and make sure it lived in perpetuity. And to care enough about what we're building and our products and our services to make sure that it can live beyond us, whether it goes to our children or our coworkers or our employees, whether it becomes a public company. is a very honorable, noble mission, and one that owners often think about, and things that we should think about too. Let's talk about the other side of things now. What did I learn from venture capitalists about how CEOs run companies? And sometimes the CEOs could be the owners, and sometimes they may not. I had one of my board members, about a year and a half into running Docstoc, when we were still sub 10 employees, come up to me. And he said one time, Jason, your goal as a CEO of Docstoc is not to do anything, not to do any work whatsoever. And by the way, this wasn't a lazy or unethical guy. This was one of the hardest working, most successful CEOs I had known. Had sold a company to AOL, later went on to become the CEO and president of MySpace, now has a $50 million fund called Science here in town where he's investing in incubating companies. And his point, which was really hard for me to understand then, and it's really makes a lot more sense now in context, is that if you as the owner and CEO of the company end up doing anything functionally, if you end up having to do the sales, the marketing, writing the copy, building the product, and you don't delegate that to other people, you're going to be the bottleneck for the growth of your own company, and you're not doing the things that are ultimately the most important, which are setting the vision and planning the course forward for where you go. Really, the goal as the CEO of a fast-growing company is to delegate any meaningful functional task that has to get done in the business and to steer that ship. The second point is what we do as CEOs is we're always recruiting and we're always fundraising. I spend about 50% of my time now recruiting for new talent. We don't have 1,000 employees, we have 50. We're hiring about 1 to 2 a month at this pace. But I still spend about 50% of my time recruiting talent and fundraising. Now, by the way, we haven't raised money in 5 years. We've been profitable for over 3 years, growing very quickly. But I'm still constantly setting up meetings with investors, talking about our business, getting them excited about what we're doing, so that at a moment's notice, when we do want to raise capital next, if we do want to raise capital next, whether it's equity or debt, I can pick up the phone and I'm going to have it done in a week. The best time to raise money is when you don't need the money. CEOs, great CEOs, hire talent way better and way smarter than them. If I'm hiring anybody that I feel that for what they're responsible for, I can do that job better than them, I'm making a huge mistake. I'm ultimately going to get up in their business, try to tell them what to do, and I'm poisoning the relationship from the start. Our goals as CEOs and leaders are to hire people who we can say, this person is way smarter, this person knows way more, this person is much better than I am. The producer of a movie doesn't direct it. He or she doesn't act in it. They don't edit it. They don't do the sound. They don't have any functional skill, except they bring it all together. That's a good analogy for what sometimes the most successful CEOs do. You don't have to be the best at anything you do, except bringing together great talent and pointing them on the course of action. The simplest management style I can say that the most successful CEOs have is they do 3 things. They define objectives. Here's our goals of where we want to be. In 180 days from now, in a year from now, here's the revenue we want to be making, here are the number of customers we want to have, here's the average scores that we want to have on our customer feedback. What are all the resources you need? Resources are money, resources are people, resources are access to talent and vendors and partners that you work with. I'll make sure you've got all those. You know it, and I'll define the objectives. After I do both of those, I'm going to step aside. It's now your responsibility to make it happen. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. All we're going to do is agree on a result that we have to get to in a period of time. We'll agree on what resources are needed, of which I will make sure are provided to you. And everything else, My team, you guys, are responsible for making sure it happens. That is the management philosophy of the most successful CEOs. But that doesn't mean that there's no accountability in the process. It doesn't mean that people get to do whatever they want. You hold people accountable. You hold your team accountable for getting those results, but you also encourage mistakes. My whole professional career, I've done work for myself except for 1 year where I worked in a startup doing sales and marketing. And I was 23 at the time, and I merged the wrong database. And I sent out an email to the entire wrong customer set that could have been very potentially offensive and misconstrued the wrong way, because it was a set of folks that shouldn't have gotten a hard offer that ended up getting a hard offer for something. And the owner of the company came to me, and I was sure I was going to get fired. I was positive. I'm like, this is it. Made a big mistake. This is how people get fired. And he sat me down, and he said, you may be expecting to get fired over this, Jason. I'm not going to fire you, because that's going to let you off the hook. You made a mess. Go clean up your mess, make this right, and make it better. And that's what the most successful CEOs do. They take the opportunity to actually let people make mistakes and use it as a learning opportunity, and they create ownership around the mistake. Instead of punishing the person that made the mistake and threatening their job and making them feel disconnected from the result, give them ownership around that result. This is your mess, you clean it up. How? I don't know, but you figure it out. Going back to the previous step, stepping aside doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable. We hold them accountable, but we encourage making mistakes, because it's only through making mistakes that we eventually figure out how to get to the best results. Took me too long to learn this lesson, but be very generous with your praise. Your team, the people that are working for you, are going to feed off of your positive reinforcement. Give praise. Don't take credit for yourself. It's not the results that I got. It's not the results that I did. It's what they accomplished, what we accomplished. Be very open and generous with taking credit, sharing credit, and really encourage critique. We do quarterly reviews of all the employees in our company. And in that process, every single one of the employees has an opportunity to sit down with their manager and say, here's also what I think that you need to improve and what I need help with. Every week, I will take at least one of my employees out to lunch or coffee, and I'll ask the same 2 questions every time. What can we be doing better as a company, and what can I get better at? And that's whether it's a senior member of my management team or an entry-level employee that I don't interact with much day to day. Culture matters. If we, as the leaders of our company, aren't the ones defining and creating the culture, a culture will still be created. And so do you either want to direct that for the benefit of your company or let it happen without focusing on it? And the final 2. One of the best pieces of advice I got early on from a great CEO coach was, there's a continuum, Jason, of how you're going to run your company. And on the one side, you're going to do all the doing and directing. You're going to do things yourself, and you're going to tell people what to do. And on the other side, you're simply going to be a coach and a cheerleader. You're going to cheer people on for their successes, and you're going to help mentor people to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the company. And he told me, I spend 95% of my time coaching and cheerleading, and 5% of my time doing directing. And he asked me what I did, and I said, honestly, I probably spend about 85% of my time doing and directing, and 15% coaching and cheerleading. And I'm not quite where he was now, but I'm doing my best to inch over. And as we build larger scale organizations, it's sure more important to be on this side than it is on that side. And great CEOs create, have, and articulate a big vision for their company. And they don't think week to week. They think, what's this company going to look like 5 to 10 years out? As Stephen Covey says, they start with the end in mind. And they go backwards from everything that needs to go from there. And if you asked anyone, what does this company look like in 10 years? They'll be able to paint you the most beautiful, articulate tapestry of what that company is, such that you'd want to step into that experience and say, I would love that company's product or service today. I would love to work at that future company. And they do it for their employees, and they do it for their customers, and they do it for their partners. So that's what I learned from my dad as an owner, and also what I've learned from really great CEOs and the venture capitalists that fund those CEOs. And the trick of it is, these parables, these lessons, sometimes don't exactly jive with each other and are sometimes contradictory. And the fact of the matter is, there's no exact right or wrong. All that makes a difference is that we get to the results we want as business owners, that we help other people, and that we find purpose and happiness along the way. And I think what we need to do is, based upon the circumstance, pick and choose which of these lessons serves us best. And I feel very grateful to have both an example from my dad, who built a business of one his entire life, and to learn all the lessons that he taught me, as well as from amazing CEOs who run tech companies with thousands of employees. And I think the advice I've gotten from both is just as valuable. And I hope sharing it with you this morning was as well. Thank you.